In life's journey, we must seek to reflect, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Road to Rediscovery with your host, Aubrey Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. In our life's journey, it's filled with bumps, hills, turns, and all sorts of obstacles. But it's these things that present challenges and lessons for us. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on past life lessons to learn and grow from them and to take it to the next level and help others who are struggling through dark times. At a young age, we grow up with dreams and are taught to remain determined and steadfast in achieving those dreams at all costs, right? Then, when you reach to the point to where you are living the dream, a huge setback event occurs. Not once, but maybe even multiple times. Well, when that happens, what does that say about our dreams, right? What does it say about us and who we are? Well, my special guest has some first-hand insight on this. Leaving her secure job in insurance, she pursued the dream of dancing, her dream of dancing, ever since childhood. She's also founded an organization that taught veteran amputees how to salsa. Now, check this out. Encountering multiple setbacks, hers is a journey of resilience and embracing identity. We're about to hear her incredible story. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Jennifer Abels. Jennifer, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Oh, likewise. We're really excited to talk with you, and I just can't wait for us to just dive into this great conversation. So let's start off by just explaining for the listeners, where you're from and what was life like for Jen growing up, and what started your love for dancing.
That is that is a great question. I was born in Nebraska on a military base. My dad was Air Force,
Hmm.
so grew up a military brat. So I always tell people I don't feel like home is anywhere. Home is where my
Mm.
family is. So I used to joke I'm from a moving van. So it depends on where that moving van happens to be, and that's where home is for me. So we moved around a bunch, definitely not as much as a lot of kids, but we moved around a lot. And my mom's actually a dancer. So she was dancing even when she was pregnant with me. So I like to think that I picked up the passion for dance since I was an embryo.
I wouldn't doubt that one bit. I've heard all sorts of, stories of, while you're while, someone's pregnant, if you do this, if you do that, that can help manifest certain talents or interests or qualities, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was born to a mover. So she was she was dancing and moving and shaking, and
Yeah.
how could I not become a dancer?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Moving and shaking. So, um, being in the military, or a child of a parent who was in the military, myself, I was like that as well. um how did that do for your how grounded was your your personality, who you were, your identity, and what you stood for, and who your family is? I mean, did you have that groundedness, um, moving throughout? I know the feeling of home
Yeah.
was a bit different, but as far as the groundedness all around you and who you are and who your family is, can you explain how was that for you?
Yes, and I think that you actually just gave me another aha moment of my whole life connectedness.
Mhm.
Being and I'll explain that in one second as I
Okay,
get over
sure.
my own like, oh my goodness, aha. Thank you, Aubrey. Um, when you so part of being in a dance community, I was really strong into
Mhm,
ballet.
mhm,
Um, when we moved to city, the first thing I wanted to do was join a new ballet studio because
mhm,
that's where I would find, my home, my friends, the people who understood me, the people who are like me. So dance was always how I connected to other people.
right, right.
And I think, as a kid, it was definitely hard moving because you don't get to move when you want to, right?
Right.
You move when you're told to. So it could be
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of a school year. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the hardest moves was in the middle of sixth grade. And we were living outside of DC
Mm-hmm.
in the Virginia side, and I had just gotten into middle school. Sixth grade in Virginia was middle school. And then
Nah.
when we moved outside of Philadelphia, sixth grade
Yeah.
was still elementary school. So it's
Oh
like
my gosh.
this big slide back, man. I just got promoted. Now I'm
Yeah, yeah.
sliding back. But it was also right around Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's an awkward time in a kid's life anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the middle of Thanksgiving. And we had lived in the area prior, but now we were like half an hour away from where we used to live. So it's not
Yeah.
like I moved right back to my old friends.
Right, right.
It was a new set of friends and
Mm-hmm.
meeting people. Um, Again, as a kid, super difficult. So
Yes.
dance is where I would find, my people, my connection, dance and music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as an adult, looking back, I can see the skills that it gave me to rely on myself. I think where a lot of my creativity comes from is being a little bit more introverted, and like I have to create my own joy.
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
create my own things, because it's not like I had a set and built of friends. And as a kid, it also, I feel like, made me not want to deeply connect because I fear I'm going to move again.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to go like for a long time, even in college, I wouldn't put
Mm-hmm.
anything on my walls. And my roommates are like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, well, I'm even going to move. And they're like,
Yeah.
but you live here now.
Right. You're an
And I'm like,
adult,
yeah,
you know. So, yeah.
but I might move. So,
Right,
and
right.
the aha moment there to me was from such a young age was dance community. Dance had become my identity. It was who
Yeah.
I was,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I loved as a kid, as a 3-year, in ballet classes, but every time we moved, like I had to get back to dance because where I got my connection to other people, where I got my validation, my worth was
Mm-hmm.
through, the pleasing its instructor, making this mean dance matter, making,
Right.
having her be proud of you was was a huge accomplishment as a kid. So that, that real dance being wrapped up into my identity, value, worth thing, which down the line doesn't come in handy, really started at a young age.
I see. I see. So it's fair to say that moving from place to place, and you of course immersed yourself in dancing in each of those places. Dancing and dance. I mean, that was part of the groundedness that you've had as part of your identity, right?
Absolutely. And every
Hmm.
time I actually have moved as an adult,
Hmm.
I've done is a dance community.
Same as
Uh,
well.
same as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I'd done an interview, when I'd started my charity, where a reporter pointed out, like, oh,
Hmm.
you went right back to dance. And I was like, oh, I did, didn't I? When I found ballroom dancing, was
Hmm.
out of college, my first job in insurance transferred
Hmm.
me out to Pittsburgh, and I didn't know anybody
Right.
out there, and I wanted something separate from work. I didn't hang out with the people from work all the time. I wanted
Yep.
a different set of friends, and I'm not a bar person,
Right.
so I wasn't gonna like. Also, it's just super awkward to be like single at a bar. Hey, I hope
It's like,
somebody talks to me.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's just awkward. So
Hmm.
I learned how to swing dance. So I started with swing dancing, and then, um, became passionate about every single dance that possibly could be danced. I wanted to learn that too. And later down in life, when I moved back to San Diego, or when I moved to where I am now in San Diego, one of the first things I did was go out dance. That's where I'm going to meet people.
Oh no, that's right. And I don't know. To me, it's more of a productive way. It's more of a social
Oh, for sure.
approach, to go somewhere where you can meet people. You go to a place where people dance, like swing dance.
Yeah.
For some people it's square dance. For some people it's
Right.
clogging. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a clean social environment that's not altered, I guess you can say,
Right.
with certain spirits, I guess you can say,
Right.
saying nothing bad about bars, but there
Yeah.
are other places as well, for sure.
And I used to be really into dancing, which obviously
Hmm.
comes later with the nonprofit work.
Hmm.
But even then, part of going to these bars and clubs that had salsa nights,
Yeah.
the club owners were never excited to have salsa night. It would be packed, but we want
Yeah.
water. Like,
Right.
I'm
Right.
dancing so
Right.
much, I'm sweating, I'm working so hard. It's such a cardio workout. I don't want alcohol. And the
No.
bar owners would tell us, like, we're giving you the Wednesday night slot because we can't afford your group to be here on a high ticket night. You
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
don't drink. So they would
Yeah.
charge us, $5 for a bottle of water to try to make up
Oh
their,
my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. You know, I swear, I think we are kindred spirits, and there's three reasons why I'm gonna say that to you, Jen. And then from there, I'll ask my next question if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So there's a few things you said in the past, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 minutes that really resonated with me because they were along the lines of how I think. Okay. The first thing you mentioned was, being a military brat and moving from place to place, you didn't really have a true sense or feeling of what is home, right? And then over time, I guess it's where your family is, no matter where you are, but it's where your family is. But still, having that sense of home in your formative years growing up until you make that discovery, oh, it's where your family is, you know, um, that question, is in your head, uh, in especially when you are uh, saying goodbye to your current friends and having to make new friends where you're about to move, right? So that was the same type of thinking that I've had in my formative years growing up as we moved around from place to place too, the second thing, how you mentioned sixth grade was middle school, but you were moving to a place where sixth grade, I guess, was at the top end of grade school, maybe? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, mine was kind of like that, right? So just check this out real quick. Um, we lived in Cincinnati for a number of years, and then my father had an assignment in Wisconsin. Okay, and so he had to move the family to Wisconsin, and I was just going into seventh grade, which was the beginning of middle school
Oh
at
yeah.
that time up there. And so while we're up there, we live in two places up there. And I thought it was just going to be one place, but it ended up being two places: Madison for the first year, Milwaukee for 2 years. Okay. So I had to say goodbye to old friends and make new friends, even while up there. So in ninth grade, which is the low freshman level of high school up there, I just completed that and advanced to the 10th grade. That's when our family was moving back to Cincinnati. Well, when I moved back to Cincinnati, the high schools there began at 10th grade. So here I am at the bottom of of the
Yeah.
the classmen, so to speak, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy, and the third thing that really makes us kindred spirits, I think, is during all that time moving around from place to place. Um, I'm not going to say I'm a musician, but I've played a lot of music for a lot of years. And when I was in grade school, my first instrument was a saxophone, and
It is.
I played the saxophone throughout grade school, middle school, high school, and all the different places we lived. So that was kind of like my identity at that time too. So
Yeah.
again, just to share those, I didn't mean to go off, but
Oh
uh,
no. I love it. My mom's a piano teacher, so like we had to
mhm,
play an instrument. If you don't
yeah,
like, you're not getting dinner until you finish your scales on the piano.
right.
Um, and chose the flute as my instrument for school. But I
Uh-huh.
think that's also the great thing about band, especially for kids. I mean, I will 1000% always forever ever recommend that kids get into band because everybody belongs in band.
Oh,
You
sure,
don't,
sure.
the
Yeah,
third trumpet is just as important as the first trumpet. You've got
sure
the
is.
harmonies, and there's
Mhm.
no, you don't have music without harmonies in there.
No,
So
no, you don't.
every kid every kid should be in music. Every kid should be in music.
Yeah, no, I thoroughly agree. 100% for sure, Jen. All right. So let me ask you this. How did you make the transition? And if it's before, was it before the leap of faith, which you and I will talk about here in a minute? Was it before the leap of faith or after the leap of faith where you kind of made the progression from dancing and being a dancer and having that, and being an enthusiast with it, to teaching dancing?
The great question, because it's an awkward leap, and as a date it should have been a little prettier, but an awkward leap. I, you and I talked before about that pressure as a kid to like, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be when you grow up?
Right,
All these things, and I just want to be a
right.
dancer. I just want to be a dancer.
Yeah.
But then I got this fear in me of the starving artist
Hmm.
trope started to really set in.
Hmm.
Of no, I don't want to be a starving artist.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I don't want to struggle, so maybe I should get a business degree and earn lots of money, and then I can dance as my hobby. So I mean, when people are always asked, how in the world did you end up with an insurance degree? uh, Fear. I ended up with an insurance
Yeah.
degree out of fear. I
Yeah.
liked my classes. I loved my professors. I had some of the best professors on the planet. So
Yeah.
obviously I felt passionate about what I was doing. And I also found like a little niche in human resources where I could still do something where I cared about people.
Right.
Um, and I was teaching throughout the summer. I was teaching actually a high school music program that George Parks Drum Major Academy. So every summer I would teach high school leaders.
Hmm.
So I would teach some music and leadership skills there. So I'd always kind of had this little teaching thing going on.
Gotcha.
And when the insurance job moved me to Pittsburgh, I connected through dance. I found a
Hmm.
dance studio. I started taking lessons, competing, and loving the whole thing. And eventually, they offered me a job to teach. And
Nice.
everything, like I was so excited by this thought, right? That I had given up on this dream of becoming a professional Broadway dancer, sort of thing.
Hmm.
But here comes a way to like make a living as a dancer. Like how amazing is this? But ooh, can I? I'm only a few years out of college. I got a degree. I'm on what is supposed to be a really straight career path. You know,
Right.
you
Right.
got I got a scholarship with this company in college. I was an intern with them. They hired me out of college. Like it's all set right there in front of me.
Yeah.
But I didn't love what I was doing, and I started what really was the key for me was I started getting sloppy in my
Hmm.
work
Hmm.
because I just didn't care anymore and I hated it and I really wanted to do the other thing. And when I realized that, I was like, that is outside of my integrity. That's not
Hmm.
who I am.
Right.
You
Right.
know, I do the best I can where I am. I always show up and I give 100%.
Hmm.
And I was like, I'm getting sloppy. I need to make a change. You either have to, cut down on the dancing and really start focusing on work. And I was like, but I don't want to do that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I made this, in a dancer, literal and physical leap of faith
Hmm.
to take a job as a professional dance instructor, which meant I could teach during the day, I would practice at night, I would compete on the weekends, and like
Hmm.
my whole life became about dance again. And I was so happy. And it was such a strange, wonderful feeling. And I wish I had the wherewithal in that moment
Hmm.
to appreciate what that difference really was. Like my migraines had gone away, my stomach ulcer went away,
Yeah.
and I loved what I was doing.
Right. Right.
And even though I took a huge pay cut,
Hmm.
and I think that not everyone, but society is not the smart move to do when you've got something that's so certain, to take something that's so much more uncertain.
Hmm.
But I loved what I was doing, and I couldn't believe how grateful I was to just be in this spot where it seemed sort of random that it happened. But when you look back on the connectedness of my life, it's part of why I love my little stars background here. It may seem random in the moment, but when you
Hmm.
look back, you can see the pattern,
Yeah.
right? That if I hadn't all my life connected through dance, all my life I've connected through dance.
Right.
I didn't want to move to Pittsburgh. I
Hmm.
didn't want to be doing the things. But if I had moved to Pittsburgh, I wouldn't have pursued swinging as a way to connect to other people. And if I
Yeah.
hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to even make that leap in the first place.
Right.
So it's all connected. I just don't understand it all in the moment.
No, I got you. No, and you know what? Very few of us really understands it in the moment, right? We don't have
Yeah.
that crystal ball. We don't know how things are going to look on the other end, and we think we have it figured out as to why we are here in this position at this time. You know, but when your path takes an unexpected turn, then I don't know how accurate we are in
Right.
knowing why we are here where we are now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
usually in reflection or hindsight, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's extraordinary. Absolutely magnificent, Jen. I mean, you've really painted a clear picture for the listeners on the inner struggle that you had between, going with the mapped out path for getting hired at an insurance company right out of college, versus fighting against your and fighting with your heart's passion for dance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and trying to figure out, okay, which direction should I go, which is right, which is wrong, which does society say is right versus wrong, to
Yeah.
help make that decision. So um, when you made the decision to take that leap of faith and to be a dance instructor, um, how how self-informed did you feel in terms of fully understanding the trade-offs?
That is a great question. Uh, and I laugh because I have this habit of,
Hmm.
if I know just enough,
Hmm.
I will jump and I'm going to assume the ground is going to catch me and I'll figure it out later.
Gotcha.
And I, I mean, I can see in my life all the times that I have repeated that pattern in my
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
I mean, moving to San Diego, I had, no family out here, no job to come to.
Right.
There was one person that I met at a John Legend concert that we were friends on MySpace, is the only person I knew in San Diego.
Yeah.
Um, but it was just, I had just enough information that, all right, I'll go and I'll figure out the rest. So
Gotcha.
as far as like understanding and really like sitting down and analyzing,
Hmm.
I feel like I skipped that part of the line in your brain when you're supposed to get that logical reasoning.
Gotcha.
I knew
Gotcha.
just enough and I go and I'll figure
Hmm.
it out.
Well, that takes care of my next question. I've always been intrigued by people who take this leap of faith, and sure, the answer may be different amongst different people, but I was just curious with you. You know, what kept you in the element of working and instructing and accounting for the trade-offs, and if you didn't take the time to really map out the pros and cons right before making the choice, I'm sure you were met with them after you made the
Sure.
choice. And so if you were
Oh,
met
for
with them
sure.
after making the choice, you've had to deal with them to some point, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, my question was, what kept you um, what kept you moving in addressing them as they came? And you just mentioned it. Oh, I know this much. I'll take this jump and I'll take care of the rest as they come. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there, I mean, that definitely that piece of it. And then,
Mm-hmm.
and also realizing as I was teaching students who used to be me. Who
Yeah.
I was teaching people who were coming from a job where they were stressed out. They're working in corporate America like I used to
Mm-hmm.
be. They are stressed out. They don't like their jobs. They're looking for a social outlet. I 1000% identified with
Yeah.
my students. Didn't matter what kind of work they were coming from, but
Mm-hmm.
oh man, I got it. I know what the gift that dance gave me,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I now have an incredible opportunity to pass that on to other people through my gift of teaching. And
Nice.
I felt like I would have reminders all the time when I would look at students coming in talking about the stress of their day, so frustrated, so angry. I'd be like,
Right.
boy, I know exactly what that feels like. And I'm
Right,
so
right.
glad I'm here and not there.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, there are things that I was like, when you work from like our day started at noon and ended at 10 at night.
Yeah,
So all of my other friends that were in, the quote unquote real jobs
yeah.
were off at 5 and having happy hour. I could never meet a friend for happy hour.
No.
Anybody going out at night, I could never meet them. I could never meet them at night
Hmm.
unless you could go out on a Friday night after 10 o'clock, which again, in my 20s, no problem. Now,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
much.
Uh,
But so there's definitely that piece of it. And then when I got injured, uh, and didn't have the savings that I would have had
hmm.
if I had stayed in the insurance track and corporate track,
Yep.
that was probably one of the first moments where I thought, what have I done?
I got you. Now let's unpack that because that's exactly the direction I was headed. So you and I, man, we are in lockstep. Okay. That's right. Right here. Right here. Right. So now we have this setback. Okay. And it's just not an impact on your health, and not an impact on you just physically, but also economically, also financially, and just unpack and talk about how it came about, and then the impact it had on you mentally, emotionally, and so forth.
It was, I feel like it was September of 2003. There I was, minding my own business. No, it was a dance competition weekend,
Hmm.
where as a teacher, you may have like upwards of 300 different dances that you're doing that weekend. You have
Yeah.
multiple students doing multiple dances. You're constantly on Friday and Saturday, all day competition.
Mm.
On the Friday night part of the competition, when I was probably, I don't know, like 100 dances into my 300 weekend,
Mhm.
I slipped and I fell. And partner my hands, during it's called the Viennese waltz. Um,
Mhm.
it's a lot of like, it's like a whirling dervish. You're spinning and traveling at the same time. And we were going back to back. My foot slipped, but we were not facing each other, and he had my hands. So when I fell, I didn't have my hands to break my fall. So my hip broke my fall, and when my hip broke my fall, it dislocated my pelvis,
Oh my
tore the
gosh.
cartilage in my pelvis.
Mm.
Later, we would find that I had shredded my abdominal wall, in like a diagonal pattern, because my body was headed one direction, but my upper body was one direction, my lower body was a different direction.
Okay.
So um, I slipped 2 discs in my back,
Oh my gosh.
um, and because, I mean, you probably know this from music and arts, kind of on autopilot
Yeah.
in that mode,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So I hear this from everybody. I smiled. I got back up on my feet. I kind of limped a bit. My partner, God love him, he's such a he like escorted me off, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm great." And I grabbed my next partner and I kept competing.
You're
And
kidding. Yeah.
I has just
Autopilot.
autopilot. I
Yeah.
feel no pain. I know I have a mission. I
Hmm.
have a task ahead, and I will not let my students down. Like, I'm
Right.
not, like, they are there. They have worked so hard for this moment, and
Hmm.
I'm pushing a lot of them farther than they could go outside of their own comfort zone
Right.
of performing and memorizing routine and performing in front of hundreds of people. I will not let them down.
Right.
So I'm picking them up. I continue to dance the whole weekend. And I remember watching back the video of that weekend. I had a professional show at the very, very end. That was the
Hmm.
last thing, responsibility I had to do. And the dance was not my best, because I was definitely in some pain. And the moment you can see on video when I walk off the dance floor, I kind of like, my whole body just sort of crumbles. And I remember going home that night and I had this huge bruise developing on my hip. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Ugh. Oh,
Yeah.
I'll put some ice on it." I was back at work, and uh, one of my coaches said, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
I was like, "I got students. I got responsibilities." And she was like, "If you don't leave and go see a doctor right now, I'm
Mm.
not seeing any of your students." And I was like,
Mm.
"I'm fine." She's like, "I had back surgery. You're not fine. Go get that checked out."
Wow.
And I finally like admitted that, yeah, maybe I'm actually in a little pain, a lot of pain.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and I finally started to like admit it. And because when I would sit, my legs would start to go numb.
Oh
And
gosh.
that had never happened before. And
Right.
and it hurt. And I thought, like, of course it hurts. I hit the floor really hard.
Hmm.
Like, I'm going to be out. And when the doctor said I was going to be out for 10 days, I cried.
Mm,
Um, I was like, I can't be out for 10 days. Like, I
hmm.
love my work. I love my students. I need to get back to work.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he's like, well, you can't, mess up your spine by doing this. So I was like, all right. But then 10 days, started to get worse. And then 10 days turned into 3 months. Three
Oh
turns into six,
gosh.
into a
Oh
year,
wow.
5 years.
Five
I was
years.
out of work 5 years total.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I had to, like, the pain got continued to get worse and worse.
Hmm.
They missed the abdominal damage for 2 years, until a smart surgeon finally went, right here. He poked a hole through my abs. And I
Oh
was like,
gosh.
oh, it hurt.
Yeah.
So I had 4 surgeries during that time,
Hmm.
out of work that whole time. And in that moment, couldn't have foreseen the future moment, but in that moment, that was the worst I had ever felt in my life, physically,
Wow.
emotionally,
Yeah.
everything, because I thought, and this goes back to what you and I were just talking about, I thought I did what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I thought I
Yeah.
did the thing where you follow your heart, you follow your dream. You
Right.
did the
Right.
thing, you took the big risk, you
Hmm.
you left a certain job that where you were, and you followed your heart and your passion. And this is what I get. This is what happens because my doctors are telling me, like, you're not gonna, it's time for you to find a new hobby.
Yeah.
And that was when a doctor would say that, because this is not my hobby, this is my life.
Right.
And any doctor who said that, I would fire.
They
So
didn't get it, did they?
I didn't get it. You don't get to be on my team if you're not,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's your mentality. So I would
Mm.
fire them. But
Hmm.
it was when I say soul crushing,
Hmm.
I mean, I feel like even that feels like an understatement to me, because
Wow.
I, you know, I did the thing I should do and tried it corporate life for a while, but I followed
Yeah.
my heart and I did the thing, and now here I am, and I've drained all my savings, whatever I had to do this. My
Hmm.
parents are helping me out financially in this, like, just a how I felt like I was letting them down because
Hmm.
I wasn't now secure. Not only
Hmm.
was I not stable on my own 2 feet,
Hmm.
literally, I couldn't stand for too long, couldn't sit
Right.
for too long,
Right.
but I financially I couldn't do it, and it felt, uh, it was crushing. It was really crushing.
Hopeless, helpless.
Hope, mm,
Yeah.
hopeless, and so helpless. And I think that when I think about when your whole identity and your whole sense of value and worth is tied up in a job or a hobby or a title of some sort like that,
Hmm. Hmm.
when I define myself, as a dancer, if I'm no longer a dancer and I have done nothing else in my life to find myself fulfilled,
Right.
if that's gone, I told
What's
my
my
doctor,
purpose? Right.
I don't know who I am outside of dance. If
Yeah.
I don't know who I am, I'm questioning why I should even be. And
Uh,
that's a
yeah.
really, because if I thought I had a purpose and I thought I
Hmm.
found my purpose, and if I
Hmm.
was so wrong, then maybe I don't have a purpose. And if I don't have a purpose, why should I be here?
That's a dangerous place to be. That's a very, very dangerous place to be for sure. And I have to say, when people go through major setbacks, especially in an area in which it was the core of who they are, their heart's love, their passion, they identified with this, such as you identifying with dancing. Okay, that was your life. It wasn't a hobby.
Right.
Um, and during that time of setback, that challenge, the struggle, which is very real, by the way. um, Even if you have support from your parents or support from friends, what are your thoughts on someone just can be so crushed
Yeah.
even with the support of their family and friends, that they could still feel isolated and alone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I have a very different level of understanding and compassion
Hmm.
for, I mean, I've always had that for mental health, and
Right.
carried over obviously into the charity work that I know we'll talk about in a bit, but
Hmm.
that this is what I feel like a lot of people don't understand when they look at someone who has taken their own life. Um,
Yeah.
but they had it all going for them. They
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
loving friends and family.
Hmm.
And it's that, which is amazing, and which are, you could be so grateful for.
Yes.
But it can't stop that one person.
No.
It's,
No.
and I will say, like, I don't even like to even think about what would have happened if I hadn't had the most incredible family and the most
Right.
incredible friends who,
Absolutely.
you know, they loved me back to health.
Yes.
They were there for me. They didn't give up on me, including some of my doctors
Hmm.
who have become like lifelong friends to me, and my physical therapists
Yep.
who, they gave me the strength I didn't have for myself. They were like, not today,
Yeah.
not giving up on it
Yeah.
today. And my
Yeah.
friends, you know, my friends would all take turns making sure somebody was coming over to check on me, and
Right.
they,
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't be more grateful for the gift of my friends and family during that time.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And yeah, when you have friends and family who love you to that degree, and not just love you. I mean, family members, they love each other, but you know, they stay on your back. Okay.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
day they're either calling you or texting you or stopping by, hey Jen, how's it going? Are you having a good day?
Yeah.
Anything I can do to help, and
Yeah.
not go for like days or weeks of radio silence and then all of a sudden someone
Yeah.
calls, right?
Oh gosh,
So
no.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even one of my best friends, she would come in. I had this zero gravity recliner chair that kind of looks like
Yep.
a lawn chair that you set up. And at
Yep.
the time, it was the only chair I could sit in without pain. And
Hmm.
so she's like, "We're going to the movies." And I was like, "Yeah, have fun." And she's like, "No," I said, "We're going to the movies, as in you, me, we're
Right.
going to the movies." And I'm like, "Nope, I can't sit in this chairs." And like, "How dare you? I can't sit in the chair. How dare you?" And she's like, "I'm
Hmm.
taking your chair. We're setting it up in the handicap section. We're going to go see a movie." And I was like, "Oh." Like,
Yeah.
and she, just simple things like that, where she'd be like, I'd get up to do something, she'd pack up the chair, be like, uh now you got
Right.
nowhere to sit, let's go.
Just determined, right? I mean,
Just,
these are the friends that you
yeah.
can lean on, in,
Yeah.
in these tough times.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I think about, like, these are the friends that saved my life.
Yeah.
Like, they were doing small acts of service to me.
Oh
That
yeah.
wonderful love language. Someone coming over and taking care of my dog, or
Yep.
walking my dog, or
Yep.
cooking meals. I had a friend who flew in from Georgia and
Hmm.
rearranged my kitchen in a way that I wouldn't have to reach for anything heavy.
Nice.
Like, she
Very
emptied
nice.
out my entire kitchen, reorganized the entire
Mhm.
thing. Like, to be able to recognize that each one of those things were acts of love, of that they were just showering on me any way they
Oh
could.
yeah, they
That,
truly were. No, they truly
so
were. And as my father always said, your true friends are the ones who are still around when all your chips are down,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and those are true blue friends indeed.
Yeah.
Absolutely, indeed. All right, fantastic. So let's talk about um, your healing, okay? And you get to a point to where it's like, as Abraham Lincoln once said, um, uh, if we can't predict the future, perhaps we can create it, right? How
My
does
dog
that?
obviously agrees with you.
Oh, that's quite all right. I love the I love the bark, and I'll say hello too. um, Talk about your healing, and then how does that Abraham Lincoln quote kind of apply to the next chapter in your journey?
uh, I love that, and I need to write that down, so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I When I felt well enough to that I could manage on my own, um, physically could get by on my own without always having to rely on somebody else. I decided that I wanted to move somewhere where I wasn't afraid to slip and fall in the ice and snow. I was literally my motivation for moving all the way across the country to leave DC, leave my friends, leave my family, and come out to California where I'd never been before.
Right.
It was like the fear of slipping on the ice and messing up my back again, because what I had just gone through, I never wanted to go through again. So I was like, I'm moving to Southern California. People are like, you doing what now? I'm
No
like,
snow, no ice.
yeah, no snow. I want to go somewhere where it's San Diego. They say it is sunny and 70 year round. That sounds like heaven to me. I'm going there right away. And my dad said, I learned long ago not to argue with you when you get your mind set on something. So I guess I'll come help you pack. So
right.
I packed up and moved out here and just figured, this is what I was saying earlier. I knew just enough to get myself to go, and I'll figure out the rest when I get here. That I know that I'm resilient, and as an Air Force brat, I know how to pick up and meet people. I moved before, I can move again. And with Air Force moving around, brat life teaches you, if it doesn't work out, guess what? You can move again. You're not stuck. Pick up and move again.
Yeah, for sure.
I figured, and I make a lot of decisions in this mindset of like, what's the worst that's going to happen, and what's the likelihood that worst case scenario is really going to come true. So just like this, I mean, I really live by this line from the musical Rent: forget regret, or life is yours to miss. And
so true.
I was so preoccupied with this idea of what would life be like in Southern California? What would it be like to live in a warmer climate where I could be outside more often, where I could be in fresh air more often, and and not have that fear of slipping on the ice? Because that was real. That was very real for me, living outside of DC, having to shovel out my car. I was physically, I'm left with a permanent partial disability of my spine. I can't shovel out my car every winter, so I have to pay someone to shovel out my car. Like I can't stay here. The idea of staying there was so
impractical,
heavy. Yeah. And I'm like, I have to give this thing a try. And I'd also been diagnosed with Lyme disease, and my joints were, I was constant fatigue. My joints were in pain, and everything I was reading was that a drier climate was better for the joints. So I was like, I have to give this thing a try, because I want to know what it's like. And if it doesn't work out, I'll figure out something else. But right now, this is all I can focus on. So I came out here, and while I was actually regifting my moving boxes to someone else, we were talking about ballroom dancing. And he said, "Oh, are you here to teach at Mary's studio?" And I was like, "Mary who?" And he was like, "Mary Murphy from So You Think You Can Dance." I was like, "Oh, I am a huge fan of that show. Like, I used to host So You Think You Can Dance watch parties in my." What? It's like, how do you not know her studio is 10 blocks from here? And I was like, what? This is so cool. So I immediately went online, and I saw that she was teaching a master class that night in waltz, one of my favorite dances. I signed up, I paid my thing, and I was so excited. I was going to go take a class with Mary Murphy that night, because dance is how I connect with people. Right. I wasn't going to teach again, but I just would get back into the world of dance as a participant this time. Yes. And then the studio called and said, "Hey, thank you for your interest, but we realize we haven't updated our calendar." That was from last year. So there's actually no class, but you're welcome to come into our party tonight. And I was like, okay, thanks. And they're like, we refunded your card, just so you know. I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And I was like, well, you should just go to the dance party anyway. Yeah. And I really fought with myself about going, and I walk up the stairs to the studio, and I hear Mary's laugh. It's very distinct. And I was like, "Oh, she's here." Try to not super fangirl.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, hey. And so I danced, and I met so many people, and such a great time. And she had some really good dancers that night. And because from my own teaching background, I circulate and I try to do somebody new every single dance. I don't like to stick with just person. And obviously that's how you're going to meet more people. By the end of the night, Mary came up and said, "So you're a good little dancer." And I was like, "Thank you." Uh, she said, "You
Fangirl.
obviously," yeah, total. She said, "You obviously teach." And I was like, "Oh, no, no, no." She goes, "You teach. Where do you teach?" And I was like, I don't. I just moved here. I used to, but I don't." So she said, "Well, do you like salsa?" "I love salsa dancing." She said, "Well, I need a salsa teacher. You want a job?"
Hmm.
I was like,
Nice.
yeah. And like the whole like body resistance of like, "No, you said you weren't gonna do this."
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
brain is like, "Forget it. Yes." And I was like, Yes, I do." And I thought, you know what? You'll just do it for a little while until you find a real job. And it'll be fine.
Right.
And during my interview, she asked if I would be willing to go to the Naval Medical Center in San Diego to teach
Hmm.
a group of um, combat injured veterans who are all fitted with prosthetics. They'd all lost one or more limbs in the wars in either Iraq or Afghanistan. And
Right. Right.
their physical therapist was one of her former students, an incredible dancer himself, Mike Podlinski. He's an amazing guy.
Hmm.
And, but he's not a teacher. And, you know, to be a good dancer and to be a good teacher are sometimes two different things.
That's right.
So he wanted a teacher to come out for 6 weeks. And I was like, I'm in. I'm so in. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
It's just 6 weeks, Aubrey. It's just 6 weeks. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I can do it for 6 weeks.
Right. Right.
And that experience in those 6 weeks was a like magical, incredible. I don't even know how to exactly describe. Every light bulb in my head was like not just going off, but like explosions of
Right. Right.
probably a really bad analogy with military, um but of just the I had no idea how to adapt my classes for somebody dancing with a prosthetic, but I knew I'd figure it out.
Sure.
um,
Yeah.
and I didn't let that fear stop me. And she said that there were other teachers who didn't want to see that kind of uh, it was heartbreaking, right? To go in to see
Yeah.
so many young men and women so physically injured,
Oh
um,
yeah. Yeah.
you know, just at the start of
Serve our country.
their
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
As she said, you know, some people just can't be part of that and don't want to be at a hospital. And I was like, I just rehabbed my back for 5 years. I don't know what it's like to
Right.
lose a limb in combat, and I hope I never do. But I know what it's
Mm.
like to be in constant physical pain. I know what
Sure.
it's like emotionally to not only be
Mhm.
in all the physical pain, be facing the end of your career in your
Right.
20s. You know, these are, I mean, you know, military folks, right?
Mhm.
My dad was a Marine, my grandfather was a Marine, I'm gonna. So
Yeah.
if
That's
you're
right.
told you're gonna be medically retired, it's the same feeling thing I was told: find a new hobby, find something new.
Right.
Well, how do I find something new? This is all I've ever known. So if I
Right.
could use dance as a vehicle to bring some sort of joy and happiness and connectedness, all the things that dance had always given me my entire life,
Hmm.
I was able to give them. It was never about making a good dancer out of anybody. If they did, fantastic. But that's
Sure.
not even near the top 10 reasons why people, you know, why we have this whole dance program is,
Right.
you know, connectedness and increasing their isolation, increasing like just laughing for an hour, being
Yeah.
silly, you know,
Yeah.
learning something new, being in a different area of your brain. There was
Hmm.
so much that was happening in that 1 hour class that my brain was just firing on like, this has to be more than 6 weeks. Like we
Yeah.
this is we're just barely scratching the surface of what we can do here.
Wow.
And that and at the time, just talking about physical therapy and combat injuries. But as we started to expand and as I started to speak with other therapists, somebody with a traumatic brain injury could really benefit from dancing, right?
Right.
To be able
Right.
to learn a series of steps and execute those steps while talking to someone, while listening to music, takes so many brain functions to do. And if that same person comes back next week and repeats and remembers that pattern, now we're talking about another element of the brain.
It's
If I
strengthening.
strengthening that part of the
Yeah.
brain, and
Yeah.
if I tweak it just a little, I know last week we went to the left, this week we're going to the right. whole different brain process now involved. There's so
Right.
much firing that like they saw like, ooh, can I have my TBI patients come in? And I was like,
Yeah.
yep. And then working with patients with some level of post-traumatic stress of who are isolated, who are feeling like they can't make eye contact with someone, who are just afraid to go into new spaces and new things.
Yeah.
Well, come here. There's a consistency. I have these amazing volunteers who are showing up every single week. You will have a familiar smiling face that will greet you every single week.
Yes.
You will laugh. You will accidentally catch yourself making eye contact with somebody and joking around and going, oh. And then, my job as a teacher, but also as a therapist and writing up our notes of reflecting back to them, be like, hey, remember I asked you when you came in and I asked you, how you felt anxiety level on a scale of 1 to 10, you were like 10. And I just asked you and you were at a 2.
Ooh,
We only spent an hour
yeah.
dancing and your anxiety level dropped. How's,
Right.
you realize how like impressive that is for you, right? They're like, yeah, like this is an amazing thing for this hour. Like, I can't wait to come back next week. And when I would
Yeah.
hear those words of like, I can't wait to come back next week, and having them like thank us after every class, I was like, this, I thought, and again, down the line, I'll have to refine that definition, but I thought, my new purpose. This is what
Right.
it is. This
Yes.
is why I went through what I went through, to be able to understand these men and women. And creating this nonprofit, this is my purpose in life. This must be what it is. So I went all in.
All in.
All
All
in.
in.
All
Yeah.
in. And
And
guess
sharing.
what?
Go
All
ahead.
in and and put up my whole identity and worth into yet something else outside of myself.
Just poured it in. Yeah. 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 I mean, sharing the passion and the love of something that gives you such joy to help others and see that joy reciprocated.
Yeah.
It's almost like looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get that, you have to think in that moment in time, this is who I am. This is what
Yes.
I'm meant to do, right?
Yes.
All right.
I am here on Earth for the day I got a letter in the mail from the Salsa crew
Yes.
in Kandahar.
Yes.
We
Exactly.
sponsored Salsa night in Afghanistan.
Mm.
With it, thank you letter with all sorts of, everybody had signed this card. They had a little Minnesota tea wall that they had signed, and I had a challenge from Kandahar that was all included in this thank you package. Like, I sent them CDs and t-shirts, gave that hat, make sure that I was able to sponsor their food and drink for their salsa nights. Like,
Right.
it was, I felt really like this is all I do, but I was happy to do it.
Yeah.
But them be so grateful and to send me something back thanking me, I was like, whoa, oh wow. And I just, I became a puddle that day.
A puddle.
Just a puddle. I was just like, the gratitude, the humbleness
Yeah.
of um trying to thank you and you're thanking me,
Sure.
and just,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was incredible.
So, what were some of the events that followed, you know, making that commitment to be all in this next chapter of your life that you just shared?
The To be all in and to also live in Southern California means you're gonna have to work more than one job.
Mm-hmm.
So being all in to me also meant working 24/7, 7 days a week. And I didn't mind because I loved what I was doing. I felt so guided to, again, I defined like, this is my purpose, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, that
Yeah.
I work 7 days a week. If you'd given me an eighth, I would have done it too. I went,
Mm-hmm.
there was one year where we were opening up some programs in Hawaii. So I traveled to Hawaii to speak with do a presentation on base and all the things. And I did it over a holiday weekend so that I could actually take like a day or two to relax while I was there. Didn't do it phone in hand the entire time, got on the plane coming back to San Diego, I thought, oh my God, I don't really remember much of besides my phone.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't disconnect. I couldn't relax. I was just focused, like must, more locations, keep writing grants, keep looking at money, keep looking for sponsors.
Right.
It had grown into 4 different locations. We're sponsoring Salsa Night. We were asked to go to a White House summit called the United States of Women to talk about our work with female veterans of military sexual trauma and how alternative therapies like dance can and should be explored rather than just traditional therapy methods. So, all these accolades, which were amazing. And I had, again, the incredible team of instructors that I had hired to work on with me, who shared that vision that we all know how to teach dance, and we all know that dance is not important. That making dancers is not important.
Right.
They all know that this is the vehicle we are using to get people, out of their houses, to reconnect with their spouses, reconnect with their loved ones, reconnect with their community.
Yeah.
Moment of joy. And we all shared that passion and social responsibility.
Yeah.
That nonprofits I didn't know anything about. So I was just trying to stay one step ahead of where I was supposed to be and learning as I go. And struggled with fundraising. And if, I would talk to some outside, and they're like, look, when I'm looking at who I'm going to donate to, and I have 2 charities in front of me, and I have Homes for Our Troops, or I've got you, and I don't know, Homes for Our Troops is actually a real organization. I was trying to make up something, but Homes for Our Troops, incredible place. But something who is constructing, adaptive homes for veterans, or a dancing one, you're not getting my money. Housing is more important. I'm like, yes, I agree with you. Housing is more important, and gives them a reason to leave the house, come back. Like, people can't stay in their house. Like, it shouldn't be one or the other. It's both.
Yes.
But if company is coming down to only supporting one, they're supporting that one. Or service dogs. I get it. It was a hard concept to understand the real therapeutic value of what we were doing. So it was a challenge to find grants, to find sponsoring financially, and which only made me want to work harder and longer and not take care of myself in the process. Like, I think it's really, and I should have seen it coming. I could have seen it coming. I ignored it. I got, as we were talking before, I got pneumonia 6 times in a year. My body was literally shutting down from the stress.
Yeah.
And, my doctor's saying, like, what's it going to take? Like, how much more obvious can it be that you need to step back? And I'm like, I can't. I cannot. I will let so many people down. I can't. And if I do, then I'm admitting that I failed. And that was like, I couldn't do it. And that's where, Aubrey, that's where I stayed stuck for a long time, is that because my identity was this charity, this nonprofit, this organization that I'd built from nothing. And, out of my own experience and my own compassion and kindness and creativity, created this thing, but it was all I ever saw myself doing. I remember saying to my board of directors, I'll fight for this organization till my last dying breath. And here's my doctor saying, you're real close. You're real close to that.
Yeah.
So what's it going to do? And I was stuck in, I'm a failure because I failed at this thing. I couldn't keep it going. So I failed. And the difference between failing at a task, failing at a thing, which maybe you didn't, maybe there's a part of that definition you also need to look at, versus I am a failure, is really, really dark and dangerous. And that's where, because I had nothing else in my life, because I'd spent 7 years just going, that
All
when
associated with dancing, right?
yeah, same exact parallel, exact parallel
Mm-hmm,
of going,
mm-hmm,
going, going until like literally my body is stopping and I can't go any further. And I had to resign that I, I was in the same place. I didn't know who I was.
right.
If I wasn't this thing that I just said that I would give my last dying breath for, like if I don't do this thing, who am I? And if
Who
I
am I?
thought, man, Aubrey, I thought I had it figured out.
Yeah,
I thought I figured it out.
yeah,
I went through all the other stuff so that I could create this thing because this was supposed to be my purpose. This was it. And guess what? I'm wrong again.
mm,
And if I thought the depression I went through before was bad, this was worse. I took more of a risk, so the crash was even farther to fall.
right,
It
right.
was it was a really, really, really dark time for me because not only did I again have to heal myself physically, like
Mm-hmm,
my lungs giving time to breathe, sleeping 16, 18 hours a day, um, just completely depleted, but also having to rebuild myself emotionally from watching something that I built, that I loved, that I put my everything into, um, dissolve, just crumble. And, you know, from the very beginning of asking friends and family to support, and everybody has the Soldiers Who Salsa t-shirts, and they would give to the fundraising things, and they would tell all their friends about it. I was letting them down. Or
mm.
at least that's how I felt. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
had I
yeah.
just reached out and asked someone, they would obviously have been like, "That's not true." But what I was telling myself of I'm letting everybody down. I'm letting all these men and women that we're working with in the military. I'm letting them down. I'm letting my
Mm-hmm,
parents down.
mm-hmm.
I'm letting so many people down. Like, not just whew, not
I
just I'm a
understand.
failure, but I'm a disappointment.
Mm. Those were the voices you heard in your head. That was the internal dialogue that you
Yeah,
had going on, right?
yeah,
Now, I tell you, Jen, and I think a lot of us can stake claim to this if we're observant of ourselves, but we can be resilient to a fault, can't we? you know,
sure can, sure
yeah,
can.
yeah, without a doubt, and we can also really fall into the groove and the cracks of believing that internal dialogue that
Sure,
we hear in our heads, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So now in this stage in your journey, there's a second type of physical healing,
yeah,
right, from the pneumonia, and you're rebuilding yourself and healing emotionally from this as well.
yeah.
Now, this is the second time. So after that second time, the rebuilding, I think, would not be as effective if you haven't changed your way of thinking. Can you share for the listeners that way of thinking that you've started to approach and apply for yourself?
Yeah, I again, I feel grateful that whatever that is that's inside me, that real resilience piece was like,
Hmm.
hey, so we're here again.
Yeah.
What if, Jen, we try to figure out the parallels between this one and the last time? How did you end up here again? Because
Hmm.
this sucks, and I don't want to do it a third time.
Wow.
You, if you could see the parallels, and now you do, you see these parallels physically, mentally, everything, but also the way you ran yourself into the ground, this time, last time with dancing all the time, how, most importantly, mental health wise, you are so depressed right now. How can we figure out how we got here? Because you will repeat this pattern if you don't figure that piece of this out.
That's right.
And I actually, so several different ways. I reached out to a friend who told me to read some Brene Brown books, and I,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
wasn't really a huge fan of reading at that point. I just got really frustrated with things. But I really connected with it, and I watched a lot of her TED Talks, and I was like, oh, someone finally gets me. This is what it is. It's the whole, I'm a failure. I failed at a thing. Oh, I'm having this, I'm too wrapped up. I've got my worth tied up in the wrong place. And then I combined it with this lesson I had actually learned from a sales training program where, in sales, you fail a lot of the time, and how you take rejection can really affect your success in sales.
Mm-hmm.
And in this sales program, they had you separate out the roles that you take on during the day, especially in sales, your roles as a salesperson versus your identity as to who you are. You're still a good person. You're still a kind person. So even when someone rejects you in sales, it doesn't change who you are.
That's great.
There's something negative about
Right.
obviously somebody rejecting. If somebody doesn't want whatever it is you're selling, if you start to take that personally, you're not gonna succeed in sales. You got to be real
That's
strong
right.
on this. They call it roles versus identities. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I thought of like that concept kind of like somehow fluttered back into my brain, and I started to sit down and be like, let's just list this out. Look about all the roles that you do take on. And
Yeah.
and roles just like a friend, a sister, a sister-in-law, a daughter, um, executive director, a teacher, all the different things like you wear a lot of hats, and we all do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when you're successful in those roles, what's the part of your personality that's coming out that makes you successful? It's like when you have that great heart-to-heart conversation with your best friend over coffee, you know who are you that's coming out? Who's that person that's connecting? Well, that's someone, to me, like, I'm a really kind person, and I can really identify with kindness, and I
Right.
genuinely love my friends. I'm a loving person. So I started making this list of, when I'm at my best, what are the attributes that come up for me? Kindness, love, creativity, caring, compassion,
Right.
like these things. So if I work on becoming more in touch with those parts of me, then whatever job I have, whatever relationship I'm in, friendship wise, romantic, whatever, if I can start getting stronger here and put my focus on who I am and my value, my worth here, because I own those. I, you know,
Right.
a job can't take that from me. If the job disappears, I'm still all of these things. And
Gotcha.
I started going like, that's it. This is my way.
Mm-hmm.
This is my way of this dark space that I found myself, is remember who you are. Your
Right.
dance is part of what I love to do, and
Mm-hmm.
will always be something that I love to do. I dance every day in my living room.
Yeah.
But if I let myself be defined by something outside of myself, then I give way too much power to it. And if it changes, because it might, and it has several times already in your life, I can still be firmly planted, feet on the ground, in knowing who I am.
Mm.
And if I look back and take it like one step further, I couldn't have created a charity out of nothing if I wasn't compassionate, if I wasn't creative, if I
Right.
wasn't kind, if I
Right.
wasn't all of these things. Like, that is what helped me do the thing. So
Sure.
maybe my purpose shouldn't be so focused on the work, the job title. It should be my purpose is living as a joyful, creative, kind person. That's your
Yep.
purpose. It's not the job.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
spent so much
Yeah.
time over here that having to, like, oh, clear out the weeds over here. Oh, what's over
Mm-hmm.
here?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
not like, which is why I loved when I saw rediscovery part of your podcast. It's not new. It's
No.
just rediscovering. This parts of you. You know exactly what that feeling is. Everybody know when you think about like one of your happiest moments, and there's a warmth that comes up inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know that feeling. You just have to rediscover it and find ways. When I think about all the different ways that I can get back in touch with some of those pieces of me, so that when I
Mm-hmm.
do feel depleted, because I'm going to, right?
Yeah.
I can't, it's not like I made 2 lists, now I'm good, right?
No.
Now it's, how do I live in those too? And when I feel depleted, how do I get those back? There are times this week, especially this summer, especially where I felt angry and enraged and um, the opposite spectrum of love and joy.
Right, right.
And but I want to show up as an advocate to and especially in these fights for social justice. I can't afford to be showing up angry and filled with rage. That's not what's
No,
needed. My
no,
kindness is needed. My passion is needed. My
that's right.
love is needed. That's what's needed to bring
That's
into
right.
this other role. So I think about these things that identify me as me to figure out how they start to show up and like weave into I play, that I
Mhm.
can really be the strongest version of it shows up.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and that's absolutely beautiful. I really, really enjoyed the way you articulated that, Jen, because um, you can only be the best self or the best of who you are in helping others or approaching something by rethinking and being in tune with who you are, being grounded in who you are as a person, not letting yourself be defined by a hobby or a job or anything like
Right.
that. So I really appreciate how you explained that, Jen, because uh, it's easy to fall into a groove of saying this defines who you are, especially someone who's been doing something for decades, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you see a person who they are, and if you know they've been in a certain occupation for so long, you automatically next to their name say their occupation, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But rethinking the way you did, and coming to grips with your identity, and not just your identity, but what makes your identity, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and 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 what happens when you give the power to something by making yourself defined by that thing,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge realization. So as we wrap up, I want to ask you, um, with this line of thinking now, that you have embraced and that you practice and demonstrate in your day-to-day life, um, what's down the line for Jen, or what amazing stuff are you working on?
I want to save people the thousands of dollars of therapy that I spent.
Hmm.
Um, and I've created these programs where I do some that are just, a one day, one time workshop that we do. I have other
Right.
courses that we do like a real 6 week deep dive into, like I said, it's not just simple, hey, make 2 lists, you're good.
Yeah.
Live in the one list, not the other. But really taking a deep dive into um, fleshing out what all these different roles are that you play. How are you in those different things? How can I
Yeah.
show up as more of that person? Because it doesn't change overnight. It's a constant work in progress, and it's still a work in progress for me too. So
Mhm.
if my part of my creative and joy and passion is in the role of a teacher, I'm teaching other people the methods I use to pull myself out of that. And I find so much joy and reward in it in such a different way. Because, like you just said, I took my power back from my jobs and gave it back to my core, my
Yeah.
identity. That
Yeah.
and being able to guide someone else in that on that path reminds
Mhm.
me of why I am such a good teacher and why I do love that part of me, is because one of the gifts I've been given is the creative and compassion piece of me. And that allows me to, if someone's not getting something, a concept, I'll create a different
Mhm.
way. I'll make sure
Mhm.
that you get there, because I've been
Right.
given a gift of creativity. So using my gifts in that
Wonderful.
way feels so rewarding to me
Hmm. Hmm.
that
Nice.
teaching these programs online is not somewhere where something where I would have thought that I would have ended up, but is
Yeah.
like, oh, when I shift my perspective to my purpose is not job driven, my purpose is identity driven,
Yes.
things really change.
Yes. Oh, for sure. 100%. They definitely change. And so Jen, how can the listeners connect with you or learn more about you? And maybe even, reach out to you for some advice, for some direction and guidance. How can they get a hold of you?
Real easy. It's just my name.com, jenables.com,
Hmm.
JEN1N
Hmm.
ABLES.com, jenables.com.
Fantastic. We're
You can
going to
reach me
make
by
sure.
email there. My
Yeah.
social media is there. Everything's all in one spot.
All there's there. That keeps it nice and simple. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. Well, Jen, I'm going to make sure and include your web address on the episode show notes so
great.
that our listeners can directly contact you or get to your website from that link. Jen, you are the embodiment of the road to rediscovery. You have gone through some struggles, some very dark times. You've learned how to reflect and apply yourself from what you've reflected and not only survive, but thrive. And you are helping people with what you have learned in your journey in helping them with their struggles. So, Jen, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for providing a platform for me to be able to share it.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
doing a great
absolutely.
service to the world.
Oh, well, you're too kind. Well, thank you so much. So now we're about to enter the segment called Three for the Road. And in Three for the Road, that's where I ask my guests three questions. They're random yet thought provoking questions that I encourage them to answer in 5 words or less. So, what do you say, Jen? You think you're up for it?
I am so up for it. I don't know if I can stick to five, but I will do my best.
All right. Well, let's see. I think you will be able to. These are
Okay. All right.
customized questions,
Okay. All right.
and yours all involve dancing.
Woo!
Okay. How about that? I know. Okay. So uh, each name or names that I say will be a question. Okay.
Okay.
So for Three for the Road, describe the attributes or virtues that you see in the following dancing styles. Number one, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers.
Mm. Romantic, classic, elegant, graceful, joyful.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I did
Yep,
it.
you hit it. Number two,
Okay.
Jennifer Lopez.
Ooh, spicy, sexy, fun, empowered, and feminine.
Oh, there you go. Right on. And number three, Neo.
Ooh, silky, sexy, smooth, cool, and swagalicious.
Love it. Love it. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, congratulations, Jen. That's three for the road.
I made it.
You knocked it out of the park for sure. Awesome. Well, once again, Jen, it's been so great having you on the show. Thanks again for coming on.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Oh, yeah. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And like I said, we will have the direct link to Jen's website on the episode show notes. That is jenables.com. So look for that on the episode show notes when this episode is released. Also, another special announcement. I'm very proud to say and share with you that the uh, Wellness Alignment ebook series from the Road to Rediscovery is now released. And the Wellness Alignment series can really, really help you tap into just some very practical ways that you can align with your self development goals, such as careers, financial, relationships, and so forth. Things like laughter, mindful breathing, physical activity. So the ebook series really gives you a good guidance in how you can align those practices with your self-improvement goals. To find more information and to order a copy of those that ebook series, go to roadtorediscovery.com/shop. That's road, the number 2, rediscovery.com/shop, or check out Amazon. It's on Amazon as well. All right, the Road to Rediscovery. It's a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now a part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life. And it feels so good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon.
The Road to Rediscovery is an AJ Shark production.